that the silver is leaving the exchanges, that the silver is being accumulated rapidly. And to put it all into context and put a bow around it, where are the commercial banks positioned right now? Oh yeah, net long. Commercial banks are net long in the futures market. Are they expecting something big? Are they expecting a price explosion? Maybe they are. Sure seems like it could logically happen against the backdrop of a world that seems to be spinning out of control faster and faster. I've been doing this now for over 3 years, and the amount of information that is available to discuss week to week, it's like a novel compared to what used to be Cliff Notes.
According to Miles Franklin president Andy Schectman, there are some interesting ongoing events in the precious metals industry which could be indicating possible upside rallies for silver. During a recent interview with Liberty and Finance, Andy does an in-depth analysis of some recent silent moves being carried out by commercial banks, mostly spearheaded by J.P. Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the United States with a balance sheet of over $3.3 trillion. During the interview, Andy notes that silver is leaving Comex in large amounts and rapidly being accumulated by large players. But these large players are doing everything a little bit under the radar, as if preparing for some coming events that no one else knows about. Andy references Bob Coleman, the founder of the Profit Plus Capital Management, a registered investment advisor that provides consulting and portfolio management services to high net worth investors and institutions. Over the past weeks, Coleman has been documenting some of the unusual moves in the exchange and the SLV ETF, and sharing them on social media platform X, formerly Twitter. In one of his most recent posts on the issue, Coleman notes that there is an unusual decline in the number of shares available to borrow on the SLV ETF. Here is the post. Something strange just happened with the SLV ETF. The shares available to borrow just collapsed. This started to occur as SLV shares outstanding went to the lowest level of 2023 last week. In July, there were as much as 8 million shares to borrow each day. In August, there were about 4 million shares to borrow each day. However, starting last Friday, August 25th, the shares available to borrow collapsed to 500,000 shares on August 28th, similar levels where we saw the SLV price lows in September last year. In another tweet from August 30th, Coleman wrote, "Silver price rising while SLV ETF shares outstanding continue to fall. Lost 3.5 million shares today alone. Last 10 days, the ETF declined by 12.4 million shares, roughly 0.924 troy ounces per share." Of course, the SLV shares are not just disappearing into thin air. In other posts, Coleman answers the burning question of where these shares are going as they exit the ETF. On August 25th, he wrote, "Massive silver addition into the Comex registered category, over 7.4 million ounces." He gave an update in another post made on August 28th. Another big addition of silver into the registered category at the Comex, he noted. 6.8 million ounces added from the eligible category. Custodian was J.P. Morgan. During his interview with Liberty and Finance, Andy breaks down the unfolding events, asserting that J.P. Morgan is deliberately dumping a lot of silver in the registered category to spike the numbers. We will now bring you clips from the interview. Please watch, share, and like this video. Also, ensure you subscribe, turn on the notifications bell, and drop your comments and observations below. Thanks, and enjoy.
If you type in on Google $ XAUWCU with the $ in front, this is a indice that talks about the 20 largest economies in the world and the way that gold is valued against them. And if you look, in the last 5 years since 2020, gold on this indice, which is measured against all of the other currencies of the world, the 20 biggest economies, is up 60%. And it's up almost 10% this year alone. The dollar's strength, the unjustified, inordinate, stupid strength of the dollar is what is blurring the reality the rest of the world clearly sees. To your point about the amount of silver transferred out of or into, shall we say, the registered category, we've seen 14.3 million ounces transferred by J.P. Morgan into the registered category. Now, some people would say, well, that's silver for sale. They're trying to drown the market. First of all, they only have about that much left in the registered, in their eligible category that doesn't belong to SLV. They have like 134, something to the extent of 134 million ounces. I think that's about right in their eligible category. of which over 100 million ounces supposedly belongs to, or 120 million belongs to SLV, which would then by extrapolation mean they only have 14 million ounces of their own left in their eligible category. Of course, Ted Butler will tell you that the billion plus ounces that they accumulated is all off balance sheet. However, the point is that people would say, well, they're dumping that kind of silver volume into the registered category, spiking the registered category. My viewpoint on it is that it has already been sold and someone is going to take possession of it. You have to move to registered in order to deliver. So some people look at that as being bearish. I look at it as being bullish. I look at it, in my opinion, you'll see that spike very soon go right back down to where it was prior. And if it leaves the Comex ecosystem and does not stay in someone else's eligible category, but leaves, becomes exponentially more bullish. And so there's been, there's a guy out there named Bob Coleman. I think he's got good information. And he talked about how there's this weird phenomenon all of a sudden of all of the borrowable shares, or a large portion of them, disappearing off of SLV, where they can borrow shares, or people can borrow shares to sell short. The latest report from Wednesday, August 24th, showed that the short position in SLV declined by 11%. And, by the way, if you realize BlackRock issued a warning a couple of years ago to all those short SLV, saying there could come a time when there wouldn't be enough metal to cover. Covering their base by saying that early enough. But anyways, I did a little digging, and here's what I found. Over the past month, JP Morgan Chase has been steadily retracting borrowable shares of SLV to ensure they have sufficient physical silver on hand to meet delivery obligations for contracts. They only need to transfer the surplus silver acquired from retracting these SLV shares. Now think about it. What did I just say there? That they have been steadily retracting borrowable shares of SLV to ensure they have sufficient physical silver on hand to meet delivery obligations for contracts. Well, they just transferred 14 million ounces to registered. Is that a delivery obligation? I believe it is. And then it says they only need to transfer the surplus silver acquired from retracting the SLV shares. In other words, they take possession of the SLV shares and they can take possession of the silver that way if they want to. And it's called share redemption, and it's much more private than actually taking it off of SLV. Anyways, hence, as the delivery date grows near, JP Morgan Chase would make concerted efforts to shift silver into the registered category. Sound familiar? That's exactly what they're doing. They are taking that silver that they in the form of retracted SLV shares, they're taking the bars behind it and moving it into the a registered category, and I believe someone is going to take possession of it. And if it's already been done and someone is taking possession of it and it leaves the ecosystem, it becomes exponentially more bullish.
Central banks and commercial banks have been exhibiting some particularly unusual behaviors when it comes to precious metals like gold and silver recently. Over the past year, apex banks around the world have bought more gold and silver than at any other point in history, and they do not seem to have stopped. Now, commercial bank giants like JP Morgan are getting in on the action and taking out unusual long positions. Coleman adds that it is particularly interesting that all of these things are occurring right before deliveries are set to begin. In a tweet in response to a comment asking what the recent activities from JP Morgan means, Coleman notes that it is interesting that it's all happening as September delivery month begins. According to Andy, all of these are signs that something big is about to happen, and the Miles Franklin president believes whatever it is, it will begin in the banking industry. Let's get back to the interview.
There's no wonder that the banks are in trouble. The 3-month Treasury on January 1st, 2022 was at 0.06%. Today it's at over 5.5%. You wonder why the banks are in trouble. You wonder when you are seeing that the reverse repo market administered overnight by the Fed is still allowing the money markets to house all of their money in the overnight reverse repo market. The Fed is allowing this to happen, which that sucking sound you hear, the people running out of these regional banks, like 16 or more of them just been downgraded by S&P and Moody's. I think that was their way of clearing their conscience. There's going to be bank bail-ins, the way that the Dodd-Frank law was written. Look at Schwab. Their bank right now, I believe, has 130% of equity in this short-term lending program with the Fed. 130%. They're on razor's edge. They are they're sandwiched in between Silicon and Signature in terms of where they were in this paradox of having all of these unrealized losses. Look at PNC Bank. There's going to be a bail-in, and I really believe there will be a bail-in that will light the fuse. It's coming, and I think it's what they want. They are aiding and abetting it by allowing the reverse repo market to take all the money market funds. You know, they had talked several months ago about disallowing that because that was what was pulling most of the money out of the regional banks. When you can get 5.5% or 6% in a money market with daily liquidity in a too big to fail bank, or leave it in Truist Bank, who's on the edge, or any of these other banks who are on the edge. If they fail, you get bailed in. And if you do get bailed in, you're an unsecured general creditor of anything over $250,000. It's gone. And why would you leave it there when the best you can get in a 1-year CD is under 5%, or 0.5% in your savings account, if you're lucky, or put it in a money market in a too big to fail bank that won't get bailed in because they're too big to fail, earning 10 times what you get in the savings account with daily liquidity. I mean, come on. They are aiding and abetting this. And the treasuries that are directly on a 5-month or a 3-month treasury at 5.5%, do you really wonder why money is flying out of the commercial banks, even the too big to fail? If you're that sophisticated, you can go right to treasurydirect.gov and buy right from the U.S. government 3-month treasuries at 5.5% and sidestep all the banking issues. If you can't take a step back and see that this is happening and is going to happen, I got news for you. You're not paying close enough attention. And I do believe this is what they are looking for. They're going to cull the regional banks. And when the next one gets bailed in, when the majority of the public has no clue what a bail-in is, wait until you see what happens to the availability of gold and silver in this industry when finally people say, oh my goodness, where do I go? Since we were little kids putting nickels in a piggy bank, we think that's safe. Most of the people in this country do not know what a bail-in is, and it was written into the Dodd-Frank law. And the fact that Silicon and Signature were bailed out is what's created so much anger by the representative from Oklahoma. We've gone over that. But even ask yourself, why did Silicon Valley Bank have $14 billion for 3 years in 10 checking accounts? Where was risk management of the bank? Where was risk management of those corporations? And where the heck was the FDIC then? Oh, but let's bail them out, right? I mean, the whole thing stinks to high heaven. And if you don't think there will be bail-ins, I got news for you. I'd bet my life on it.
The U.S. banking industry is certainly troubled, regardless of what government officials like Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen would have you believe. And the overall economy is beginning to show serious signs of an imminent slowdown or even a decline. Do you think this is why commercial banks like J.P. Morgan are betting big on silver and other metals? Please drop your replies and observations in the comments section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos on gold, silver, and copper. Thanks for watching.